Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Weekly Spark. Filming this on Halloween, so happy Halloween, and we're going to look at ravens for the month of November. Ravens, to me, when I think of them, they first off, first thing that pops into my head is kind of knowledge and wisdom. That is not only because of their innate intelligence, but also because of some of the correlations and the roles that they play in myth. They can sometimes be associated with divination, but they can also sometimes be associated with the dead, messengers of the dead, battle. They can be carrion eaters. They're all opportunists. So some things in my notes about ravens this month. As I said, they're very intelligent. They tend to work in a nuclear family, so they collectively raise the children, and they do hold large gatherings, even sometimes possibly funerals or gatherings to mourn a deceased member of that community. They communicate large range of vocalizations and have been known to mimic human speech. They have excellent facial recognition and memory. You'll hear stories of crows or ravens that recognize people that have been good to them or bad to them, and even can pass that knowledge on to others in their community. They are omnivores. They'll eat anything, but they can be associated with battle in some myths because they are scavengers. They don't really eat humans off the battlefield, or didn't in the Middle Ages, but a carrion crow eats what it finds, right? From the ancient Rome to the Middle Ages, they've been associated with the souls of the dead, being an omen of death, and connected to the dead in that way. But then, then you get the raven in the Epic of Gilgamesh and in the story of Noah in the Bible, where the raven was the first bird released off the ship because they're such strong flyers, and that they would be sent out to search for land. In the story of Noah, the raven never came back, so he must have found something. And it was the dove that was sent out later that came back with the olive branch in its mouth to indicate that land was near. In Tibet, they're seen as messengers to the supreme being. They hold a rather prominent place in many different Native American mythologies. A few, just to mention a few. The Koyukon people, so that's going to be the Alaska region, the great raven Dot Sonpa made the world and placed 2 of every animal on a raft during the Great Flood to preserve them. Right. Those kind of archetypes about the Great Flood and about things that happen really fascinate me when they're across cultures and across times. For the Tlingit people of the Pacific Northwest, raven was a mythical ancestor. That magical raven had the power of transformation. He could remove his feathers like a coat. For the Cherokee, the raven was originally white, and in trying to gift fire to the people, fire had been set by the thunder god in a hollow log. The white raven tried to bring that to the Cherokee people, and his feathers were darkened by ash in his attempt to gift the people with that. For some Native American groups in the South American Southwest, the Hopi, the Navajo, and the Zuni, the raven came from the center of the cosmos, bringing light from the sun to give humans wisdom and understanding. So some commonalities there. If we go back to the raven originally being white in some tales, though, there are 2 different Greek myths, one that focuses on Apollo and one that focuses on Athena, where the raven, being white, brought bad news to either Apollo or Athena. And don't kill the messenger, was turned black in punishment for having delivered the bad news. Yeah. Before we leave mythology, we have to mention Celtic mythology, where the crows and ravens are associated with many different Celtic goddesses. There's the goddess, the Morrigan, who sometimes is described as one goddess and sometimes described as three. So as three, she can be Badb, Macha, and Nemain. But her associations have to do with all, like, some of the real visceral qualities of life, like sex and death. So she, in different attributes, she can be seen as a battle goddess. Badb, Cathy, literally translates as the battle crow. And so she would terrify and intimidate and confuse warriors on the battlefield. The Morrigan, associated with birth and death, fertility and destruction, those kind of visceral opposites there. The Macha was an Irish sovereignty goddess, and oh, my dog wants to say hi today. She's coming into my lap. Yeah, and show your face on camera. There we go. There she is. Okay. All right, get down. The Macha, her husband was she was pregnant, and her husband was boasting that she could win the race, and she was like, do not make me don't make me run this race pregnant. And then he did, and terrible. She won the race, gave birth at the finish line, and as she was dying, after the trauma of this experience, she cursed the Ulstermen, and so that every 9 months they would suffer terrible pangs of debilitating pain, mirroring childbirth. So you'll find that in Irish myth, the curse of the Ulstermen. I think for me, the favorite myth that's associated with the raven is the Welsh god Bran. And in Welsh, Bran is the word for raven. He had a sister, Branwen, who was the white raven. And their tale is told in the Mabinogi. And to paraphrase it, Branwen was married to the King of Ireland. He then was very abusive to her. She was a scullery maid in the kitchen. She trained a starling to speak and to carry the message back to Wales to her brother. So Bran and the other brothers and the army came to battle Ireland to save her. A lot of problems ensued. Again, I'm paraphrasing. There was a cauldron of regeneration. The Irish warriors were being reborn. Anyway, Bran and his men, very few of them that remained, took Branwen and made it back to Wales, where she died of heartbreak for seeing the destruction that was caused. Bran only made it back as a head because his head, he was a giant, he was a magical being. So his head lived on and talked and prophesied for many years. And eventually, after further adventures, his head was buried under the mound at the Tower of London. Bran, the raven, at the Tower of London. So the Tower of London ravens, it's interesting to look up and see how long they've been there. They were officially decreed that they should have their wings clipped and be tended to in the late 1600s by Charles II. It links back to a myth that if the ravens ever leave the tower will fall. I personally see a connection to the Welsh god Bran and his head being there, but that's just me. Some people say they're officially sentinels there, but they do, take army rations, and the Raven Master lets them out in the morning, feeds them, cleans their cages, puts them in at night. They do have their wings clipped a bit so that they can still fly, but they don't go too far. There was a breeding program that was tried in the late 80s. Read the Raven Master book if you're interested in more. It's truly fascinating. And they're mischievous too. They will mimic speech. They'll steal food from tourists. There was one that famously used to play dead, and then the tourists would freak out, and then it would pop back up and be alive. So they're entertaining and entertained by the tourists. Ravens are one of the rare species that recognize themselves in a mirror. Other species include dolphins, some apes, and elephants. Wow. They'll sled down snowy roofs. They'll put nuts in the road for cars to run over. They'll use tools to solve problems, to solve puzzles. So absolutely fascinating. A few more edging towards, well, a few last random occurrences. You know, you've got that Aesop's fable where the crow wants to drink out of the pitcher, but then it can't get to the water. The water level's too low, so it drops pebbles in the pitcher to raise the water level to drink. Charles Dickens had a pet raven named Grip. He had a couple different ravens. They were all named Grip. The last Grip was taxidermied at its death and is currently at the Free Library in Philadelphia. And, I mean, of course, there's Edgar Allan Poe and the Raven. Wisdom and then that descent into madness that is in the poem. To Poe, the raven symbolized mournful and never-ending remembrance. So again, that memory connotation that goes back to, oh, I didn't mention Odin, right, the memory. Odin, the Norse father god, had two ravens, Hugin and Munin, translating to thought and memory, respectively. They would fly out to Midgard, which was our world, and gather information and then sit on his shoulders and talk in his ears and give him that information. I mean, those are probably some of the most famous ravens, and I neglected to mention those till the end. So there's a lot. There's a lot of information. They do show up frequently in mythology. I think that hits on some of the most major points. I'm excited to look into, I mean, there's going to be a tower page. There's going to be maybe a black and white raven combo page for Bran and Branwen. So many ideas were already popping into my head. So I look forward to working with ravens as my inspiration for the month of December. Nope. For the month of November. And hopefully that will spark some ideas for you as well. I haven't updated the Pinterest page yet, but it's coming this weekend. Since, like I said, this is the 31st, I've got a little bit of wiggle room to get these edited and out to you before I'll start taking it to the page next week. So, as always, please feel free to like and subscribe. I would love to have you back, see you here for future episodes of Weekly Spark as we move into November. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you soon. Have a good Halloween.